Marriage is the easiest thing on the planet. Said no one ever. Ever. Ever.
This is the talk I wish someone would have given me 42 years ago.
Okay, here we go.
I don't know who I'm talking to, but I'm talking like a gangster because I'm telling the enemy he's not going to have your marriage. Somebody needs to hear me in this place. He's not going to have your marriage.
Say it, baby. Say it.
When you say I do on your wedding day, you're promising in advance, in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, you'll never face a struggle without me.
Hello and welcome to today's XO Now workshop. My name is Cassie Maldonado and I'm so excited to have Sean and Lanette Reed joining me shortly for our empty nesting workshop. It's going to be a great conversation, so stay tuned. Before we get started, I want to give a few more minutes for people to join in. So if you're already here, give us a shout out in the comments of where you're watching from. I'm going to go to our comments and see. So go ahead, go do that right now. We have Jonathan watching from Grapevine. Hi, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us. Let us know. We want to see far and wide. Are you watching from a different country? Let us know. Are you watching on XO Now? What's your favorite thing on XO Now? We're so excited. Thank you so much for watching. After today's teaching, Sean and Lanette will stick around to do a private Q&A session exclusively on XO Now. Send in your questions throughout the workshop and go to sign up for a 7-day free trial at xonow.com. The entire workshop is streaming there as well as the private Q&A session that will only be on XO Now. All right, let's see if any more people have joined us. I'm going to go back to our comments. All right. Oh, wow, we have Cole from St. Louis, Missouri. I love St. Louis. Love St. Louis. How about them Cardinals? All right. We have Argyle, Texas. We have Alberta, Canada. Oh, Canada. I'm from Michigan. I see you. The North is watching. Awesome. Guys, I'm so honored to be joined by Sean and Lanette Reed for our empty nesting workshop. With over 20 years of pastoral experience, Sean and Lanette Reed have a unique way of presenting the truths and practical tips that help couples thrive. They are both builders who have dedicated their lives to building others. With their books, YouTube channel, and podcast, Marriage in Transition, they are passionate about building healthy families that leave a legacy. As a part of the XO Marriage team, the Reeds are speakers and authors. Lanette is our mediator director and a nationally certified mediator trainer. Sean is a teaching pastor at Open Door Church in North Carolina, and together the Reeds have 3 adult children. Sean and Lanette, it is so great to have you here with us today. It's going to be so great. Can you guys give us just a little clue in on what you're going to be talking about today?
Okay, today we're going to discuss some of the highs and the lows of empty nesting, and some of the questions that each couple needs to process as you're navigating this new season that you're in. That's one of the most difficult things is, are we having the right conversations? Are we processing how we're feeling about it emotionally and what that should look like for every couple?
Wow, I'm so excited. Guys, all right, let's get into today's teaching. Remember, if you are on XO Now, drop your questions in the chat at any time for the Reeds to answer at the end. Sean and Lanette, thank you so much for being here. Take it away.
All right, what's up, guys? Listen, we are so excited to share with you just a little bit or a couple of nuggets about how to empty nest well, because there is definitely a wrong way to go about being an empty nester. So
Yes.
For the most part, for the majority of our marriage, we've been parenting.
Yep.
So we've been married 23 years and our oldest is 24 years old. So I want to say, like, for the jump, it's been all about the kids.
Yes,
right?
And we are basically in a process of basically being newlyweds almost for the first time.
Discovering one
because
another.
we've never had that. And so we have 3 children that are now all exiting college, basically. One of them's graduated college.
Yep.
And so we're now in an interesting spot of figuring out what life looks like now. And to be honest with you, it's kind of fun
Yeah.
for us.
But a little nerve-wracking, just a little bit.
Yeah. Why is it nerve-wracking for you?
Well, it's a little nerve-wracking because, like I said, you know, we've been parenting for the majority of our marriage. And so it's been all about the kids. And we have a healthy marriage.
Right.
But there are still times when the house is silent. I love to clean. There's nothing to clean, right? There's nothing to do.
I don't miss that at all.
And so it's like I think no one really needs my attention.
I get that.
So there's like a void.
And I can only imagine. And in both of our cases, we were working as parents. But I can only imagine, like, if you're a stay-at-home mom and your whole world revolved around basically doing something for, providing for, nurturing your children, and all of a sudden they're adulting. And it's kind of like, what does that transition look like? And I do know some men who are kind of around my age, where Lanette and I, we do look young. And so sometimes people look at us and they're like, especially Lanette, and they'll look at us and they're like, I can't believe y'all are empty nesting. Okay, we're both 42. And I got to a place as a man where it was kind of like I was facing like a midlife crisis kind of. And I was trying to process emotionally like what I'd accomplished and what I needed to do with the rest of my life. And the whole empty nesting process kind of exaggerated. It heightened
sped it up,
some of those emotions because it was like, okay, my kids are grown now. What in the world are we supposed to be doing? And so one of the things we want you guys to really get is that one of you all may be doing great. You may be doing wonderful. And you may look at your spouse and they're struggling with anxiety or depression. They may be dealing with grief and sadness. And you have to be careful that even though you're doing well and you're ready to streak through the house naked, right? Your spouse may be on the other end of the emotional spectrum.
Right.
And we have to make sure we don't guilt trip them because they're feeling a certain way about their children leaving the home.
Don't rush them and then don't push them, right? So, like, okay, for instance, so when the third child left the nest, Sean was excited. Like, he was happy. He was the one that was like wanted to run around the house naked. Me, on the other hand, I was like, my babies, you know, I love them. I want them to go. I want them to succeed, and I want them to experience life. But for me, it really felt like a part of me just kind of came to an abrupt halt, even though I thought I did a really good job prepping myself for that moment.
And that's the thing. The truth of it is, different emotions are going to hit you at different times. For me, my grieving kind of happened as they were graduating. And so I'll never forget, our whole world revolved around our kids' sporting events, choir concerts, back to school shopping. Like, all of that was our world. So even our calendar, our schedule was based around spring break and summer vacations and Christmas break. So if we were going to plan anything as a family, and I know y'all can relate, if y'all can relate, make sure y'all holler at us in the comments. But basically everything about what we did, it was rooted around their schedule. And so we got to our son's last basketball game.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just like, I'll never forget it. It was one of the, they made it to the playoffs. And then all of a sudden they lost, I think, in the second or third round. And it was one of the most quiet, awkward car rides home. But mine wasn't about the game. It was the fact that a whole season had ended.
That was it.
And then our daughter basically,
choir program.
You know, it was both our daughters, they had choir programs that kind of closed out that chapter.
That was it.
And I was bawling at those events because it was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This will never be the same again. Yeah. And I know some of you all feel the same way. So how do we go about processing this season and moving into the next thing without feeling bad about ourselves or the new season that we're in? Because not only are you shifting from parenting in a different manner now, because you're basically releasing control to them in some ways, but then also at the same time, who are you as a couple? Like, are you guys good? Is your marriage healthy? Are you guys okay? And so we want to give you guys a few questions that you and your spouse need to discuss and that you may need to process. And so the first one, we're going to go through 7 different questions that are very important for you all to process. The first comparison, if you will, is, am I resting or am I restless? Am I resting in this new season or am I restless?
Yeah.
And so when we talk about being restless, we're talking about restless in your new normal. Some of you all may be familiar with the term, and it's not a 100% clinical diagnosis or condition or something, but it's a basic term that describes what some people feel, which would be empty nest syndrome. And empty nest syndrome, basically, you're going through extreme sadness, some grief, maybe even anxiety, right? Are you restless?
Yeah.
And if you are, have you tried to suppress it or have you talked to your spouse about it?
Right. I remember when I was going through, the empty nest transition. So there were places in the house that would be a trigger for me, like walking by their room, putting their clothes away, moving something that belonged to them, and it would just trigger. And I was beginning to become restless. And so at first I tried to suppress it a little bit. I tried to, play it off, downgrade it a little bit. But then after a while, I couldn't hold it in much longer. And so I just had to talk to Sean a little bit about what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And honestly, that actually gave me an opportunity to rest and to really let me know that that was normal.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because you're used to meeting their needs. You're used to the noise in the house. You're used to cooking bigger meals. And then all of a sudden, you're in a whole different season where the groceries have changed. The money hadn't changed for us because we were still spending, but now we're spending in 3 different states because our children have gone to different states. But there's this feeling as if they need your care, but they aren't there. So really they're grown and they're off on their own.
Yeah.
And you're having to process how do you continue to go on. But what we want to challenge you all to do is to think about how do you rest in this new season. And what that really means is that you guys are going to have to reconnect emotionally,
Yes.
and you're going to have to reconnect physically. As a couple,
Yeah.
you have to find yourselves again. One of the things that Jimmy Evans talks about in the 4 laws of love are the 4 priorities. And one of them is you want to prioritize your spouse,
Yeah.
that they're your number 1 priority, and that your children come after that. And so it's really important that you begin to reprioritize and say, you know what, that season is now coming to a close and it's about us right now.
Yep.
How do we reconnect on an emotional and physical level?
Well, it's really important because if you allow that restlessness to really get at you, it'll actually isolate you rather than coming together with your spouse and leaning into him or her. And so allow that, that tension, allow that uneasiness, allow that kind of that moment of, I just don't know what I'm feeling, lean into your spouse a little bit more, and that'll put you on a pace to empty nesting really well.
And this is where it's huge that you, as the spouse that's on the other end of it, where you're not grieving as much and you're not feeling the depression or the anxiety.
You're like, let's party!
Yeah, you have to be extremely empathetic.
Yeah.
And that's what Lanette was saying earlier, is don't rush them through it, right? Don't shut them out, because what they're feeling is real. Like, that's something that they're going through, and they may have to get therapy. You may have to process that. But the biggest thing you can't do is silence yourself when you're going through this kind of grief. You have to actually communicate it. And one of the things that strategically may soften the blow for you is that you may need to plan time to FaceTime with your kids, once a week or something, or you may need to plan a family trip to where you guys are going to gather a little bit later on. The next thought is, are you releasing or are you reeling? And when we say reeling, we're talking about, are you pulling them back in? Are you releasing them or are you reeling them back in? And when we talk about releasing, what we're talking about is, are you allowing them to do adulting, okay? Are you allowing them by letting go of some of the control? Look, you can even let go of some of the bills, okay? But you're at a place where right now you should be mentoring rather than controlling.
Yeah, and I think if you are reeling them in, then you have to understand you may be reeling your kids back in, but again, you're further isolating yourself from your spouse, and should be a time of reconnecting, getting to know one another a little bit more. So like I said, we only had 4 months, 6 months, and then Brandon was born early on in our marriage. And so we really haven't, besides dating, getting to know one another it's a whole new thing for us. And so we had to be willing to release them, let them be them, allow them to be the adults that they're trying to grow into, and then turn around, face your spouse, and really dig in deeper. And actually, again, empty nesting is an opportunity to simply just get closer with your spouse.
Right. But I will say it was difficult because you're stuck in this place that, especially if your kids are in college, you're
there's
still
a balance.
helping. You're still helping them. You may be sending them food money, or you may be coordinating your schedule, with them to help pay tuition or something. So part of you is communicating with them responsibility, but you're also releasing responsibility. So it's this weird balance and tension of they're no longer high schoolers.
Right.
They are grown, but they're somewhat dependent on you.
And this also goes into maybe your children are much older, and so you're switching from really parenting them to actually coaching them.
Exactly.
It's before
Yeah.
it was, no, you will do this because I said so.
That's very good.
Now it's like, well, if I were you, and early in my days.
So it's the difference between like hovering over them and being a covering for them.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference. When you're hovering over them, it's basically you're still trying to tell them everything and do everything and plan everything with them and for them, as opposed to just covering them and being a nice guide. So be careful that you're not inserting yourself into places that they should be handling on their own. That's a really great way of thinking about it. And you can't allow your fears and what your personal experience was growing up to dictate and determine what their life and their experience is, because it's two separate things.
Yeah.
And if you impose your life, you basically could be projecting onto them something that happened in you, and that'll be detrimental to them.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about this a little bit later, because one of the fun things is today we actually have our son Brandon with us, and when we bring him in, we're going to talk about the lack of communication, and that's going to be something that's kind
And
of
honestly, we don't know what he gonna say.
All right, so the third thing, regretting or renewing. Y'all, this one is huge. Are you or am I regretting or renewing? And there's a reason why we're saying are you or am I, because one spouse may be in a different place than the other one. And you guys need to process these questions and talk about it together. For instance, are you regretting something that you feel that you failed to give them as a parent? Are you regretting? Are you at a place to where you're saying, man, I wish it was kind of interesting. Before we were live, Lanette was saying, whatever wasn't done to a degree, it's too late now.
Yeah.
And so you have to let it go. You really do. You have to understand that there are no perfect parents around. There aren't any perfect parents around. We can't go back and redo when they were 7, or when they were in 7th grade, or when they were seniors in high school. You now have to say whatever was done is done.
Right.
But who are we now as parent to child, and how do we make the most of the time that we have now?
And you should be renewing. Go on a marriage retreat, right?
Yes.
What are your life goals right now? It's not too late to start over, regardless of how long you've been an empty nester, regardless to how old you are. There, if you're still breathing, if you're watching this,
That's right.
There's still life in you. You have vision. You
Preach
have
it, sister.
purpose. And so, what are the things that you aspire to do? Places to go,
Yes.
things to experience. So, don't live in regret, but know you have much more life after this. And now is the time to simply be about it. Like, go out and do it.
And of course, we have a whole resource at XO where we have our vision retreat. And I would encourage every couple to do a vision retreat, to where you either take a staycation or you go away on a vacation, and you may need to rediscover, like, okay, now that we're in this different season. And let me just say this real quick. You have to realize that you're in a different season. And I know we're talking about a lot of different resources, but the reason why we're saying that is because sometimes if you're too passive, then you're just allowing the circumstance to happen to you, and your emotions will run amok. They will drive you nuts if you don't become proactive.
Yeah.
So something in you has to say, okay, now that we're in this new season, what are we going to do about it? How do we avoid regretting this new normal that we have by being bitter about what we didn't do for one another? Look, some of you all, listen, when it came to the law of priority and pursuing one another, maybe you didn't go on dates because you were so busy with the kids. Maybe you guys did allow your romance to fall apart. Maybe you weren't putting each other as a priority and your kids were in the wrong place. You can either live with regret, or you can say, you know what, what's done is done, but we still here. how do we renew what it was that we had between one another, and we move forward from it and allow this to make us stronger?
One of the things I would say is, renewing or regretting is, he said this is a new season. So this also may be a great opportunity for you to seek some healing.
That's right.
I know that there have been moments in my life early on while, parenting, where I pushed myself aside. I pushed my needs or the health or my emotional health aside, and I didn't seek counsel or didn't get the help that I needed. Now that they're gone, now is the time to put you first and seek counsel, seek wisdom, so that you can live this next season on a better note.
Be good to yourself.
Yeah.
All right, the next one. Am I romantic or am I remote? Are we being romantic toward one another, or are we separated, remote?
Are we chasing one another?
Yeah, are we chasing each other? Romance, sexuality, you might have to figure it all out over again, right? You may be at a place where hormonally you've changed.
Oh, yeah.
Libidos is all over the place. Physically, you may not like what it is that you see when you look into the mirror. Like, there are all types of changes that are going on the spectrum of trying to figure out where you are romantically.
Yeah.
The one thing you don't want to do is go to your corner of the house and they go to their corner of the house, and you live this lower than average, sexual intimacy or pursuit of one another.
Yeah.
No, man, you got to put in some work. If you, and I remember, this is interesting, if you say that you're just not feeling it, you have to work your way into feeling it. If you're feeling like, man, I don't have the words, or the energy is just low, you got to work up that. You got to stir like the fire. You know what I'm saying? And it start off small, but you keep adding to it, and
it'll set ablaze,
and it'll start burning, and a burning stronger, and it'll get romantic. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Next one. Are you involved in recreation, or are you regressing?
Oh.
Okay.
Now this one is just good for your physique, right?
Yes.
You need to, if you want to live a full life, all right, you're not chasing kids around anymore.
Right.
You can't get your 10,000 steps in that way. Now is the time to put your physical body first.
Yeah.
And that could look from...
Because if you're just sitting around the house just moping about how you don't have your kids there anymore, how do you expect to come out of that dark place?
Girl, get your body back.
Brothers, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Find some friends.
Yeah.
Find some friends, and y'all go hang out and go do some double dates. There's community that is to be had.
Yeah.
But sitting around with a remote on your lap, just looking at TV all day long, listen, Lanette and I are traveling the most that we ever had in our lives. We're doing more than we've ever done. And I want to tell you the God's honest truth, I'm not exhausted. I'm loving what we're doing right now, because this is something we discussed in our vision. This is something we talk about in Marriage and Transition, our book, which is really big. The latter part of the book deals with how to shape your life around building your legacy, and it energizes us. And so I get up 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, I'm at the gym, and I'm working out for like an hour, hour and a half. Lanette's doing her workouts and stuff like that.
Not that early.
Okay, but she's doing her thing. Yeah. She's also, and there was a season where we kind of lost this, but she had to find her new fun. What was fun like now that it didn't revolve around the kids' games? Or what was fun like now that, and Brandon's like my best buddy. And so like we would go play basketball together, we would, practice together. All of that was gone. Yeah. I had to find that vibe for myself, because we didn't have that anymore.
I also want to ask you, what is a goal that you've pushed aside, right? Everybody has goals and aspirations and dreams. And I want to challenge you to rediscover that. Sit down, maybe on that writer's retreat, or maybe if you got some time, and just dream again. Yeah. Just think to yourself, what are the things that I wanted to do when I was younger? And figure out how you can do them again, and then share them with your spouse.
Yes.
And figure out how the both of you can do that.
Yeah. So another one, the last one, and then we're going to dive into a discussion with Brandon. Are you reimagining, or are you repeating? Are you repeating the same old, the same old redundant behaviors, same old just accepting life as it's hitting you? Or are you reimagining the future and dreaming of the possibilities of what could be? Now, part of this is where you guys are going to go on vacation, dreaming, dream big. and then talk to each other about it and plan it.
Yeah.
Reimagine the type of lifestyle that you want within your home. Some of y'all, you don't need as much square footage anymore.
I was just about to say that, yeah.
Talk about it real quick.
Yeah. So I love a big house. I love all the rooms. I love the big backyard. But honestly, all of that is for the children.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't want your children to come home as often anymore.
Yeah.
So it's okay for you to downsize. You get a condo, get an apartment. It's okay to shift
What?
your whole life.
You mean that they shouldn't feel guilty because they're okay with the kids coming for a short amount of time and then leaving
And
then
leave.
and it's okay for them to have
leave.
fun and go on a date without the kids
And leave.
and be okay? It's okay.
It's okay.
You got to reimagine your future now and understand y'all can pick a place that doesn't have to be in a specific zip code because you're trying to find the right school district.
Yeah.
Like a lot of our housing choices, like everything that we did revolved around, planning around them. And so now you can change things up, okay?
Yep.
So we're gonna bring in Brandon. Now that we've kind of given those questions, this is our son here. And I want to say, first question, and we're putting him on the spot, y'all. He's in the hot seat.
Say hi to the people.
Hello, everybody.
Okay.
So, for you, did you feel when you went off to college? Did you feel like we released, or did you feel like we were kind of controlling?
You can be honest.
I thought you guys actually did very well. I thought y'all were right in the middle between releasing and controlling.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say y'all were far enough to kind of let me do my thing, but close enough, like if I needed help, if I wanted to talk, call, come home, y'all were like close enough for me to do that.
Okay, so I will say, at least from my perspective, I wanted to talk to you every single day. Was that?
I was good with a text message.
Yeah.
No, I needed to hear your voice, especially early on. Now, not so much, but I wanted to hear your voice every day. Was that too much for you at the beginning?
Was that too much for me at the beginning? No, I think it's kind of interesting. So obviously, in high school, living in the house, most of the conversating and stuff is done before school.
Yeah.
When I come home after school, so we don't really have casual communication, like over text or over calls, because we're having those conversations like in person or like while I'm at home. So my friends know I don't respond to texts.
Yeah.
Best friends know I don't respond to texts. You gotta call me, or I might not call you back. So when I left for college, it was kind of that same vibe, but you guys didn't know that about me because I was in the house. So I would just talk to you in person. So you guys are like learning that I have no communication skills, basically. So it's kind of like a weird aspect that you were getting used to.
That's
and
true.
I was also getting used to.
So what you're saying is it wasn't personal.
Not at all.
That he wasn't responding. Come on, parents, listen.
Yeah.
Don't take it all so personally that they don't want to talk to you as much. But at one point, we did end up talking. We did end up talking to you, saying, "Hey, look, man. Sometimes we're calling. We need to know how you're doing, or we're checking up on you." So I think at one point we kind of agreed to like a once a week.
Yeah.
Make sure
And
that
it got
you.
better.
It did.
Yeah. Did some of your friends though that they struggle with their parents like being too involved, basically with every decision that they were leaning in on their parents pretty much to decide for them their future?
Yeah, it was on both sides. Some were really controlling, and that kind of drove their kids away. And then some just let their kids, do whatever. And some kids, when they were at home, their parents were super controlling, couldn't do anything. And then once they got to college, obviously they have that freedom, and they kind of just go crazy. So, like I said, you guys kind of had like a balance.
Yeah,
between
and I think that's a natural response. That if we're too controlling, after a while, that little taste of freedom, once they're out, they're just gonna kind of go wild. So there is this this idea that if we aren't completely involved, if we aren't involved in every decision, that they're gonna lose it. But for you, as the first one to leave the nest, it's different for you. You didn't require as much conversation, whereas our younger two, Brianna and Brittany, they want those phone calls.
Yeah.
In fact, if you don't call Bree,
Oh, gosh.
she you know, her response is just kind of one that's totally different. So each child is different. What, as you kind of are branching out on your own, you're making your own decisions, what do you feel that you do need the most from us as you're kind of stepping into different places?
I think, you know, as I'm getting older, obviously 23, about to be 24, it's kind of like the adulting things, taxes, like insurance, you know, stuff like that I did not think about at 20 going to college. So even back then, there's things now that's changing as I'm getting older that, you know, I'm kind of getting into. So, like I said, just, you know, like being close enough to where I can just go and ask, get help for that. Kind of like you said, like the covering. Yeah, I think that's.
So, you know, fast forward, you're done with college, Bree's done with college, Brittany's almost done, and you guys are everywhere, right? Kids in New York, all that good stuff.
New York, Oklahoma City, and Texas.
So one of the things that we did, I think maybe about a year ago, was we started having weekly or every other week FaceTime calls with the family. What does that do for you? Like when we have those calls with everyone?
I think for me that kind of like grounds me in a way. Just kind of shows that, you know, you guys, despite your schedules, our schedules, that you're making time, reaching out, still being close. So like I really appreciate that. And I think this kind of goes with the last question you asked, like what do you need from me? Kind of ties into the FaceTime. I think, you know, once it's kind of past adulting, you kind of just become like friends, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the next thing, just, you know, somebody that I can go to for anything, not be judged.
Yeah.
If I do make a bad decision or like something like that.
You see me as your friend.
Yeah. Anyways.
I will say this: we took a family trip, and one of our goals, Lanette and I's, part of our vision is that we actually want to do at least a family trip, one a year, and it's hard because everybody's schedules is all over the place. We also would like for us to still have Thanksgiving and Christmas together. And I'm gonna tell you, one of the hardest times of empty nesting.
Yep. Holiday.
For his birthdays, he couldn't come home. Those was like finals weeks because his birthday was in early December. He couldn't come home. We couldn't always get there. And then sometimes our daughter couldn't come home for Thanksgiving. So that was frustrating for us. And we would still FaceTime. And that was, I will say, if there was a moment for me where I was really bothered by it, it was in those moments. But we had to come to grips and say, it's not the end of the world. We're just gonna make sure we spend some quality time on FaceTime, and then we'll make up for it at the next holiday. Those parts were really frustrating. But then I guess that's why we want to kind of make a conscious effort to say, hey, let's get together and let's have these special traditions that we can maintain. One of them was we did this little Pigeon Forge Gatlinburg, you know, family trip. What was that like for you when we all got together? Because I think y'all said that it was one of your favorite times that we had together.
That was probably one of the best trips that we've taken. Again, I think that just shows, you know, that y'all are reaching out, trying to plan and everything. But kind of like with my friends, especially in college, people come from all over and then they go back to, you know, to where they came from, or they move for jobs and everything. But you still keep those connections in the way they can, in any way that you can. Like how you guys said, FaceTimes, or like I'm planning a couple of trips this summer to go see them. So kind of like the same thing, kind of like, you know, in that friends group, you want to maintain your friendships, and you do that however you can. So.
Man, thanks, Brandon. I appreciate you, man. Really, really, really appreciate you
didn't
for being
embarrass
on.
us.
You did great. You did great. So hopefully, guys, as we transition into this next section where we do our Q&A, we're really hoping that this is going to be beneficial for you guys. And I do want to say again, empathy is the key for all of this. It's having a heart that says that I may not feel how my spouse feels, but they matter to me, so their perspective matters
Yeah.
to me. And we're gonna create the right atmosphere to be able to discuss what we're going through without shaming them for feeling how they feel. Like if you are really grieving and they're celebrating, it should be okay on both ends, and we don't shame each other because of that.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like, grabbing the book Marriage in Transition, or listening to the podcast, we talk a lot about just navigating those seasons, because you're going to go through the same struggle or the same situations, but you're going to go through them a lot differently than one another. And being able to create, like you said, that atmosphere, a safe place to articulate what you're feeling. You're not there yet. I'm past where you are. It really does create this new world that you have the opportunity to build with your spouse. And empty nesting doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Right.
It doesn't have to be hard.
It should be a great thing because it means that you've done your job.
Yeah.
Right. Parenting is always, I mean, it's a lifelong goal, but honestly, it is a shift that you've done your job. They're grown. They're going to be okay. And that's one of the things that you have to realize. They're going to be okay. They may not do everything perfectly, but they're going to be okay, and everything's going to be all right.
Yeah. I think it's going to be good. So just being able to have fun, like get back to where you focus on your marriage.
Yes.
Putting you guys first, prioritizing you. Some of you guys, you had to work a lot to provide for the whole family. Like, do you have to work as much now?
Yeah.
Now that it's just you and your spouse, can you cut back on those hours?
Yeah.
Can you cash in on those vacation days that you had just building up?
Praise the Lord.
And can you guys go out and explore new things? And so, again, empty nesting you don't have to go through empty nesting syndrome in a negative way.
Right.
But you can actually go through it really well, have a great life and a great marriage.
Yeah.
So I think it's good.
Well, thank you so much, Sean and Lanette, for doing this today. It's been so good. I'm not even close to empty nesting, 2 and an 8-month-old, but
Ooh, yeah.
goals that your kids are your best friends, because she's my best friend right now, but we'll see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She thinks I'm pretty cool right now.
Just hold on.
And I loved that you guys talked about reimagining romance when it comes to that time. Like, it doesn't have to be this sad thing, but it's a chance to be like, hey, like, get to know them again. And,
Absolutely.
And reimagine what it looks like to be in love and in teenager mode again, I guess. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And if you haven't read Marriage in Transition, I love Marriage in Transition. I wish we would have had it our first year of marriage, because there was lots of transitions in those first 5 years. So it's a tool for us. So if you haven't read that, grab that from our store today. We are headed over to XO now for an exclusive Q&A session. If you aren't a subscriber, head over to xonow.com to start your 7-day free trial to be part of our Q&A session. Along with today's workshop, XO Now features hours of marriage content, as well as our brand new program, XO Fitness. Thank you so much for watching today on YouTube. If you're on XO Now, don't go anywhere. Our